what could be the inevitable, and that's having to play in empty arenas. Because I mean, they did. Let's just go back to that moment. There were 16,000 tickets distributed for that San Jose Sharks Minnesota Wild game, and the next day we found out about this media crackdown, and the league immediately responded that we didn't care about them. We're just going to have the game played, but then we're going to do this next thing the next day to quote unquote protect players and keep people from coming in the locker room. And the reality is that we were just pulling players into jam-packed hallways and interviewing them in worse situations. So that's my only point last week, is that the whole media crackdown was just protecting nobody from anything, essentially. But now we're at the point where no doubt what the NBA did yesterday is affecting the NHL. We're seeing globally events with large crowds being canceled or postponed everywhere. Leagues in Europe, hockey leagues have been shut down. I was just talking to an NHL player on the phone. Actually, it was last night. That was telling me about another player that used to play in the NHL that's playing in Germany right now. That after the response yesterday that they're going to suspend air travel between Europe and the U.S., is trying to figure out how the heck you can get home. There's a lot going on out there, as the NHL is now responding to, obviously, with what the NBA did yesterday.
Hey, can we call you back in a few minutes?
Yep.
Thanks, bud. Russo Radio, The Athletic, theathletic.com, discussing what has transpired today in the National Hockey League and in the world. In fact, an hour and change ago, 9 to noon, at XL Energy Center for Box in the Box, courtesy of Brian Heating and Cooling, rolled in probably 7:55, 8. There's Miko Nordo setting up the radio show, getting ready for the radio show. Then we were informed about an hour and 30 minutes ago, the NHL is making it so there will be, for all teams, no morning skates, no practice, no team meetings, no media access, and at noon, a Board of Governors conference call. Craig Leopold will represent the Minnesota Wild on the status not only of today's games, but the rest of the season. We're chatting about that with Michael Russo from The Athletic, and we'll be back after this.
Live from the X present food at some of these places.
No, it doesn't look like it. It looks like the food distribution places are Nicollet High School, West Cup, another location on Main Street. Families are going to get the food, according to this email. It's not clear what they'll be doing.
So, Candace, there was a big debate there. I mean, originally the superintendent of schools in New Rochelle said, we're not closing down schools willy-nilly. We have too many concerns about meals, breakfast, lunch, and the rest of it. The governor of New York said, oh, yes, you are. And now you have a containment zone and 3 schools closed. What has that debate been like in the community or among teachers that you talk to?
Well, there definitely is a debate, and I understand that the governor, as the leader of the state, has to act, and his choice to act in this way is his choice to act in this way. I also understand the superintendent of schools has responsibility, and so people are on both sides of this debate and issue. I personally believe that school is a really safe place for students rather than roaming the streets, because again, we're not a community where everyone will be quarantined to their home. So we have a preponderance of teenagers roaming around on North Avenue, and this is numbering in 6,000 students, right? Some students will be at home alone because their parents have to work. I mean, this is not Shangri-La, and it's not a very tiny community. It's 100,000 people and 11,000 students. So I actually fall on the side of the superintendent in this regard, but I understand the governor had to act.
And I mean, that just makes me want to ask you what the community is like now. I mean, you have, of course, inside the school there, but the streets, what's the grocery store like? What are people saying? You mentioned Starbucks and restaurants are closed, right? What are the grocery stores like?
Yeah, no, every business is open. So this idea in the media that there's some kind of containment zone is shut down is a little bit false. The only thing that's shut down are the gathering places. The grocery stores are open. The Starbucks is open. All businesses are open. And there are kids out and about where they wouldn't be if they were in school.
Candace, your school, Bernard Early Childhood Center in New Rochelle, just north of New York City, remains open. Candace, Penn Kindergarten This is Jen from Mountain Lake Terrace in Washington City.
My kids go to school at Shoreline, which just closed the entire district school for the next few weeks at least. I'm glad that they did this, knowing that a staff member has the coronavirus. I wish that they would have tested earlier, as I feel like we could have avoided some of this, potentially. I'm glad that they're taking the steps that they are. We're trying to make up for lost time, and I hope that it resolves quickly.
Corey Turner is here, NPR Education Team Senior Editor. Corey, we've got the view from what's called the containment zone in New Rochelle. What's the picture nationally with K through 12?
You know, honestly, Todd, it sounds like what's happening in New Rochelle, but in microcosm in every community across the country. You know, there are lots of districts that do not have any documented cases of infection yet who are seriously considering shutting down, canceling schools for what the CDC recommends, 14 days. But there's this really interesting and important tension, I think, between the public health risks of staying open and potentially waiting until there is an infection in your schools, and what we heard from Candace, which is the public health risk of sending vulnerable kids home to households where there might not be parents, because let's face it, there are going to be a lot of parents, especially low-wage workers, who don't have sick time, they don't have vacation time, they can't work from home, and not only will these kids be at home, but there might not be food in the refrigerator. You know, a lot of people talk about free lunch. Like, it's not just free lunch, it's free breakfast, free snacks, and a lot of kids get dinner too.
Pamela wrote on our Facebook page, yesterday I made the incredibly difficult decision to pull my high school age son out of school. I'm in Michigan. We have only 2 documented cases here. My son's school was supportive of my decision, and they've announced many changes and have made many tough decisions, but they have not yet closed. Views from all around the country as schools and school districts struggle with what we're all struggling with, how to handle this new, it's not even normal, the new situation of coronavirus across the country. A lot more on K through 12 and a lot more on university decisions too. I'm Todd Zwillick, it's 1A from WAMU and NPR.
From Certic Store Wine Spring Event. Beer, wine, spirits, and cheese for any springtime celebration, and featuring tastings throughout the store. Now through Sunday at Certic's on Hennepin University, Northeast Minneapolis, or Certix.com.
I'm Angela Davis. Join me Monday through Friday at 11 on NPR News. We'll discuss life in Minnesota and how the latest news affects you. Tune in and join the conversation. NPR News, discovering what matters.
Today it's Counter Stories at 11 o'clock after 1A here on NPR News. We're talking about school closures for the coronavirus. St. Thomas Academy in Mendota Heights has canceled classes for today and tomorrow. The school has put out a notice saying that a parent of one of the students has tested positive for coronavirus. That parent had not been on campus, but out of an abundance of caution, the school has canceled classes for today and tomorrow. The University of Minnesota is going without in-person classes, only online learning, and that's happening pretty much across the nation, as we'll hear about coming up here on 1A on NPR News. Cloudy skies with areas of fog in the morning, rain likely statewide today, mixing with some snow in the north, high temperatures, low 30s to the upper 40s. Right now, some light snow in Bemidji, 33. It's 42 here in the Twin Cities.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Capital One and Walmart, offering a credit card that can be used for a range of uses, from shopping at Walmart to travel purchases. Details about the card's features are at CapitalOne.com. Capital One, what's in your wallet? And from Home Advisor, committed to helping homeowners find the right pros for their home projects. Homeowners can read reviews, book appointments, and check cost guides for home projects at HomeAdvisor.com or on the mobile app.
It's 1A, I'm Todd Zwillick. We're talking about coronavirus and schools closures all across America. 1,200 schools, K through 12, have closed or are planning to close in response to COVID-19. Corey Turner is here, senior editor for NPR's education team. Corey, let's talk a little bit more about the K-12 response. We had Candace there from New Rochelle. Here's one teacher, Jeannie from Georgia, who called in.
Coronavirus has affected us because it has closed all public schools in DeKalb and Cobb County, which is within the Atlanta area. And our students are forced to stay home because they don't otherwise have child care for their children. This affects the school because these students are not coming to class, which means they may not be passing the classes. And without passing those classes, they will be forced to retake them and pay for those classes again.
So grades are just one of many concerns here if kids are going to stay home. Talk a little bit about how schools are balancing the importance of education, the importance of grades, the importance of going to class, the importance of food, which we touched on for many students, and also the public health imperative of keeping people separated.
Yeah, I've spent much of my time the last couple of days on the phone with superintendents all over the country, and so I like to think of this story in terms of a hierarchy of needs, and obviously the very top are the public health concerns. First and foremost, exposure to coronavirus. Is there a documented infection or, fear of some sort of exposure to someone who's infected within that school community? So that's what superintendents are looking for. We should also be clear that the decision to close schools is not just up to a school superintendent. Local public health officials are absolutely in on these decisions and are helping to make these calls. But as we said right before the break, Todd, there are also very real public health concerns to sending kids home. If they're going home unsupervised, there won't be parents home, especially if they're younger kids. If they depend on their schools for free meals, breakfast, lunch, snacks. I know a lot of schools increasingly, this might surprise listeners, a lot of schools serve dinner around 4 o'clock right after school gets out. This is really important. Food insecurity is a huge issue. And you also mentioned before the break, kids who are housing insecure. It's 1.5 million kids in this country. Imagine how disruptive canceling school for 14 days is going to be for a child for whom school is really the most stabilizing force in their lives.
So how are superintendents and other officials thinking this through? They have so many different priorities here. We've had public health experts on this show this week who've said the time to separate, the time to shut it down is before you have a virus problem in your community. It feels silly and it feels like overkill to do it because you say there's no coronavirus here, but that is the time you have to do it, and there are so many other priorities at the same time. How do they express that struggle to you?
Oh my gosh, it's such a hard call. I've spoken with several researchers lately as well who say the same thing. There's been very good research of the 1918 Spanish flu looking at individual cities in the U.S. and you can see, the earlier they close their schools, they save lives. So the research is pretty clear that closing schools is a powerful way of slowing down epidemic. But, I spoke with Sonia Santelises, who is the CEO of Baltimore Public Schools, and she said, look, for many of my kids, I know that school is the safest place they can possibly be right now. It's a difficult calculus. So one of the really interesting things I'm seeing right now behind the scenes just about everywhere is superintendents scrambling to figure out, all right, most importantly, for these kids who depend on free meals, how can we get food to them if school is closed? So you're seeing a lot of really creative improvisation. I've seen, I think it's in Tacoma Public Schools in Washington, they've created a sort of drive-through system where they're putting breakfast and lunch for, I think it's 2 days at a time in bags, and creating designated pickup points where parents can just drive right up, grab the food, and head out. You can walk up if you need to, get the food, and head out. I even spoke with the superintendent of Wyoming, Jillian Balo, and she said they're thinking about doing the same thing because they have kids who live in really remote rural communities, and they have to figure out some way to get food to these kids as well.
We had a caller before who was talking about actual class content, grades, also important. Maybe not the most important thing when you're talking about health, safety, and getting fed, so we understand that. But talk a little bit about how different school districts can handle the academic part of this. I mean, some districts probably can get on Skype or an app and have the kids do it that way. I don't know if that's the case everywhere.
Yeah, so this is really complicated stuff. I think it's, I've basically facing the prospect of treating these days basically like snow days. And they'll either have to find time in the summer to make them up or get a waiver from their state and basically just write them off, which obviously is a really tough choice.
And we also heard from two parents who were concerned about a lack of guidance from administrators in their school districts. Listen to Addison in Florida and Teresa in Indiana. They called our inbox.
There's no communication from the school about planning to keep the children home and having them do studies from home. When
a lot of events that are be at XL Energy Center that could potentially be postponed or canceled here down the stretch. So, obviously there's a financial impact on the league and the owners and the players, but there are real people that that really depend on a lot of their income coming from these buildings being lit and not dark.
So if you can paint a picture, and it's difficult because we're still waiting for official word and all of that, let's say that they suspend games until further notice. What exactly are players doing? I mean, what are teams obligated to do in terms of whether they're keeping all of these players local? Are they practicing? Like, how do they keep all of that in terms of that engine moving?
Well, again, it's totally up in the air. I mean, I've got to think if the league announces today that they're suspending the season, that means that obviously these players can't get together and practice, and they can do whatever they want on their side. But there's so much up in the air, especially now with the I don't know with this travel ban between the United States and the majority of Europe. Not the UK, from what I read and heard last night. Just think of how many Europeans are in the NHL. How long can the leagues keep them here? A lot of these guys might want to get out of town before Friday to make sure they can get back to their homes. So it's really, I think the ban is for Americans traveling abroad. So I don't think that if you're from Europe, you have to be stuck here. But at some point here, you do have to make a decision. You can't keep everybody here indefinitely. So there's just so much up in the air. I cannot even think that when the announcement happens today, that the leagues are going to have all the answers. And that's what I keep on saying about what does suspending the season mean. I just don't know, because none of us know how long it's going to take us to get a grasp on this pandemic. I mean, this thing, could be, again, everything that I see on TV, it says that this is going to get worse before it gets better. I just don't think that the leagues will be able to give every answer today on whether or not the regular season's over, whether or not the actual season's over. My guess is that, my gut is going to say that they're just going to announce that the season is suspended, and that they might even say we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks.
If they, Michael, last one for me. If the NHL shortly after noon today, when the Board of Governors has the conference call with all the teams, if it comes to the conclusion that there will be games but no fans, how do you think that will be received?
Well, regardless of how it's received, I can just only imagine how haunting it will be. I was talking to Eric Stahl about this yesterday down at the Wild facilities about just the excitement of playing a playoff race in front of fans and the atmosphere generated by these fans. So, I was talking to a player last night on the phone as I was driving back to my podcast, and we were joking about how this player loves scoring goals, and his excitement level after scoring goals is second to none. But a lot of that comes from the goal horn, from the excitement of the crowd going nuts. He's like, do you even hug your teammates after it? Just imagine when you're at a hockey game, all the excitement that comes from the music, the jumbotron, and all that stuff. I mean, it would just be so bizarre to play these games without fans. And just to give you an example, I went to the San Jose Barracuda Iowa Wild game last week, where it was played in front of 50 fans, and not because of the coronavirus. It was just there was nobody in there, and it was the most eerie game I've ever been to. It was almost comical watching them from a game ops perspective treat it like a real game. I mean, they had the ice girls, they had the in-game entertainer with the microphone doing all this stuff like the place was 20,000 people as opposed to 50 people, and it was bizarre. And you have to be one self-motivated, self-disciplined player to play in that type of atmosphere. It would just be absolutely again haunting. Can you imagine? I mean, you're supposed to go next week to do the Chicago-Winnipeg game. Can you imagine playing at a United Center with no fans? Building that, shortly after noon that they're going to announce at a minimum that they're suspending the season for a couple and revisit this in a couple weeks. That'd be on my gut.
All right, buddy. Thanks for the time. I know you're busy. Talk to you later.
Yep, see ya.
Michael Russo, Russo Radio, The Athletic, theathletic.com. 9 to noon with Ryan Carter on the horizon. He'll be joining us about 5 minutes from now on a day from XL Energy Center where Elixir Radio is indeed
Based. This is a big change. What is the adjustment like?
Yeah, well, on our EdSurge podcast, we just talked yesterday to one learning center director who's really trying to help their faculty, and it sounds like some professors are using these kind of tools themselves, to talk with people on research projects on, Zoom or Skype, but others, there's some pretty unfamiliar tools that they're going to be suddenly asked to use. It sounds like the typical thing is going to be for professors who don't really know how to do online learning or have never done it before, to sort of turn on their webcam and do a remote class where people might be either live sitting at their own laptops wherever they are and just try to hold a seminar that way, or to record a lecture. And one learning center director I talked to said that professors, since some campuses are still open, the professor could go to an empty classroom and record it there and upload the lecture. But in many cases, I think they're doing it in their faculty offices or at home to record a lecture and then upload that to a system that the students have access to, and then have other assignments and other things online.
But of course, all of this only works if the students have internet connectivity where they are.
No, that's true. And I mean, the thing about the number of campuses that have closed, we're talking about a lot of different types of students. I mean, I think sometimes people close their eyes and think of like a residential campus, but a third of students in the United States that go to college go to community colleges, and access colleges that may or may not have the kind of tools at home that people take for granted in other parts of in other parts of the country. And so there is a big question, and colleges are saying that they're trying to make some loaner laptops available and try to sort of provide for that. But then at the same time, some of these campuses are closing, so the resources are, the students are going away from campus. So I think there's a lot of details that, since this has been done so quickly, I think there's a very big discrepancy, and some students it's going to be harder for them than others.
By the way, I should correct one thing we heard earlier on the program. We had a caller who said that schools were closed in Cobb County near Atlanta. At present, just one elementary school is closed in DeKalb because of COVID-19 exposure, as we understand it. So we just wanted to make sure we had the most up-to-date and accurate information there. Jeffrey Young, of course, having lectures online works if everybody can get online and the professors and the students can do it, but not all learning at college is lectures. There are field courses, lab sections, practicals. I mean, those are out for now, right?
It's really interesting, and I was asking some of the folks I've been talking to on campuses about that, and yeah, I mean, in some cases there are theater classes, and the diversity of things taught at universities are huge. There are performances getting canceled, and research projects that students have been working on all semester that they have to walk away from, without the lab access. So it's not as if everything can be suddenly done online. And I think the timing of this means that for a lot of the universities that are closing, it's near spring break. I think some of the early campuses to close just a few days ago were thinking this maybe would last a few weeks, and so they could finish up the semester, almost more like that snow day idea that Corey mentioned earlier. But this seems to be, as it drags on a little longer, or people are now thinking differently just a few days later, it's a bigger question, I think. What the impact will be.
It does seem, in a way, like there was some luck involved here, that a lot of these closures have landed at least near spring break for a lot of campuses. I mean, that's a week or two of breathing room that you wouldn't have had if this were, the middle of October.
That's right, and I think that kind of breathing room is what we're hearing by some campuses. Although today I saw that Vanderbilt University is one of the first I've seen that says for the entire semester now they're not going to come back to in-person classes, and so that's a different equation.
Campuses all across the country, just public school districts struggling with decisions about whether to keep students in class, whether to send them home, and how to handle it once they send them home. Jeffrey Young with EdSurge, senior editor. Jeffrey, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Well, we got this tweet from Nate who says, my friend goes to Duke University and they're being made to leave. She's independent with no support from family, can't afford off-campus housing. The university doesn't seem to be considering the fact that some students don't have anywhere else to go. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about that issue directly. Low-income students, students at college on campus who may be food insecure or housing insecure themselves as their campuses struggle with what to do with the immediate health decisions when it comes to coronavirus all across the country. Corey Turner of NPR is also here with me. I'm Todd Zwillich. It's 1A from WAMU and NPR.
says MLS is suspending its season. The Gopher men's basketball team beat Northwestern last night in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. The Gophers